Oh, we are live. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this live. My name is Jana Retief, and I will be your host today. I am incredibly lucky to have Dr. Madison Kackley with us here today. Thank you so much, Madison, for joining us.
Of course, of course. I'm always excited to talk to you guys. Thanks for having
Yes,
me.
oh, it's lovely. I mean, I think this is definitely not your first time here with us on these lives, and we always just want to invite you back. And of course, we're very excited because you are one of the speakers at the upcoming World Nutrition Summit. But before we dive into that, I just quickly want to share a little bit to the audience about who you are. And then anyone that's joining our live stream today for the first time, just to explain how this works. So you are welcome to pop any questions you might have for Dr. Kackley in the comment section. And also please say hi. Let us know where you're from. So I'm tuning in from Cape Town, South Africa. Very grateful for this sunny day. And Dr. Kackley, where are you tuning in from?
I am over in the States, Columbus, Ohio. So
So
landlocked, smack dab in the middle of the state.
great. So early morning your side, I'm assuming.
Yes. So if we hear some pitter pattering, my husband is wonderfully getting my son ready for ready for daycare.
He sounds like a gem. So, let me tell you guys a little bit more about Dr. Kackley. So, Dr. Kackley is a research scientist at the Ohio State University, and she leads the She Is Lab, Scientific Health Empowerment and Integrative Solutions. Her groundbreaking work explores the impact of nutrition, exercise, and innovative science on women's health, with a strong focus on ketogenic diets, exogenous ketones, and their influence on metabolism and cognitive function. One of her most remarkable contributions has been research showing how dietary interventions can restore menstrual cycles in women struggling with overweight and obesity, a discovery that is opening new doors in tackling challenges like insulin resistance, PCOS, and perimenopause. Dr. Kackley will also be joining us at the World Nutrition Summit this October. So if you haven't grabbed your ticket yet, I know there are very few in person tickets available. So if you want to join us in Cape Town, please make sure to grab your ticket. Otherwise, you can also get yourself a virtual ticket, and we would really love to have you join us. So, Madison, I know you've been on our live streams before, but for those that may not know you, I want to first ask you a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
So, what drew you to women's health, and why do you think that it's such an important research topic, and why is it has been under researched for such a long time?
Man, that is a loaded but great question. Originally in my graduate career, I worked with my mentor, great friend and colleague, Dr. Jeff Volek. He kept me through master's and PhD. And obviously, if you know anything about Jeff Volek, I don't know if anyone here does, but if you know anything about Jeff Volek, we are hyper focused on ketogenic research, decreasing carbohydrates and kind of associating that with special populations and how metabolism really can influence a lot of those diagnoses and those caveats. So how do we use this nutritional strategy to ameliorate some of these symptoms? And in our studies, we were taking in men and women both. But we noticed that women always had some type of different response. It wasn't a bad response by any means. It was just different in terms of mechanisms, time, changes in menstrual status. And from then, Dr. Bullock was gracious enough to kind of let me take that charge in the women's health sector. And just recently, even though I've been under his umbrella for a while, I was promoted to assistant professor at the Ohio State University. So now we are collaborative in terms of what we're doing in this precision nutrition, low carb research. But women's health specifically, because we saw these changes only in women, and obviously menstrual cycle, you can see that only in those who are born women. There's so much complexity to it, right? In order to watch the cycle, see the changes in women, you have to follow that complexity. So this is cycle transition, phasic changes, those types of things. And it's not just okay, we see estrogen at this level during the intervention, it's going to stay this way because of the diet. No, we have to follow them and very routinely follow them. And then as we're getting out of the normal cycles, that's a whole different ball game. So it's been underrepresented and under researched, and a part of it is because it's so difficult. It's hard to follow. It takes a lot of time in a very large lab, of which the She is very large now. I'm grateful for the girls that work for me, but it takes a lot of patience. And it's you're basically looking in a very routine, timely fashion to follow these women as they're going into the diet. So let's say that somebody starts the diet who has a normal menses. For adaptation, we see between 2 to 4 weeks for somebody to feel really great in their performance, but that may change for a female who is hitting her third week and going into the luteal phase. How does this work for them? So there's so much strategy and complexity behind it. It's necessary that we have research and laboratories that are specifically focused on really following women around for a decent period of time. So very excited to do this research. Everyone that comes into our lab, not even for just research specifically, but for body composition testing, they're so interested in somebody actually focused on the nuances of their cycle or non-cycle. It hasn't been very present in our previous research or previous literature, and I think we're opening the door now, and it's really incredible to see.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, it seems I struggled to unmute myself. I mean, it's such an important topic, and I'm a mother of 2 young girls, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, but I feel like one of the biggest gaps or lack of knowledge out there for women, especially from my experience, is knowledge around your cycle. Just knowing that there's a cycle and that within that cycle, you will feel differently throughout the month. Just that very basic knowledge is often not even known to a lot of women. It's not the type of thing that we really go out and teach kids. And I mean, and specifically girls, and my daughters are 6 and 4, and that they almost already know everything about a woman's cycle, and that it's healthy. It's a sign you are healthy. It's normal. It's nothing to be ashamed of, because often there's so many stigmas around it. Don't talk about it, hide your sanitary towels and hide the tampons. We can't talk about it. So yeah, I'm incredibly passionate about this. And I'd love to ask you more about the She Is Lab. So when was it founded? And what does it mean for you to be part of this? And what direction is it taking at the moment?
Sure. Yes, the She Is Lab was founded after, and I see some people in the comments asking about Jeff Volek at OSU. Yes, Dr. Jeff Volek. So we had done a study that was, I think I may have said this on our last interview, but we did a study looking at hypocaloric diet in men and women both, specifically with a ketogenic diet versus a low fat diet. And the anomaly there, the thing that we saw that we didn't expect, was the change in the frequency or the timing of the menstrual cycle that we saw in women. It was really an exploratory question, and it wasn't anything that we had planned to investigate. But when we saw that women who had actually a normal pattern also change. And then there's women in the study who thought that it was okay that they were done on their period. So they were 50 years old and they're like, I haven't had a period in a year. Some of them were 36, haven't had a period in a year, and they gained it back. And it was just shocking to them. And as we're going through the study, it was focused mainly on body composition. That at the forefront, the main research question had been. So we weren't thinking about this cycle status. We weren't thinking about the menstrual health component. And so when we investigated that, we were like almost blindsided, and very silly that we were blindsided by it. It just wasn't something that was at the forefront of our questioning. And then that really drove me to bring that to the front. Okay, everything that we have done in men and women both, where we've made the general average assumption, or use the statistics at a large sample size with men and women, let's hyper-focus to women and then base these strategies, these intervention strategies around their cycles or their life stages. And so in 2023, the She Is Lab was essentially born. Our paper was finally published on that specific study, I think in 24. I don't know, all of the years are blurring to me, but I do know that we were established in 23. And so once we saw that there was these changes specifically to women, our first pilot trial, which ideally the publication will be out in the near future, but was just looking at cycle tracking, just to see where these timing effects would be and where the estrogen was rising. And I know we have a lot of information out in the world about this is the follicular phase, this is the luteal phase, but we weren't hyper focusing on what changes during all of those. We know some hormones increase and some decrease, but it's not just your normal reproductive hormones that we're looking at that affect everything. There are other hormones that come into play too, inflammation markers, energy requirements. So one of the things that we were doing aside from just watching their cycle was looking at the energy that they were burning during which phase. And we actually broke it down into 4 phases, depending on which publication or which book you're looking at. Sometimes it's just follicular versus luteal and then menses, but we broke it down into the menses, which starts the cycle, the follicular phase, then the ovulatory phase. And even though ovulation is just one day, there is a I would say 2 to 3 days pre and post leadway. And that's different for every woman too. So, which is why it was really necessary for us to follow these women around quite frequently. And then it goes into the luteal phase. And there is a different energy component, different energy needs, different caloric needs almost for each one of these phases. And one of the things that we saw that really stood out to us, and this is preliminary and obviously not published yet, you guys will see it soon, that in the luteal phase for all of the women, we saw an increase in resting energy expenditure. So they were burning a decent amount of energy in comparison to the menses. So luteal was higher than any of the other phases. Not only did we see that it was higher, we saw that they were actually more fat burning at this stage. So in luteal phase, for those of you who don't know or haven't been through luteal, you feel like crud. You feel sleepy and tired. And usually a lot of the dogma has been, okay, luteal is scary. Luteal, you're very tired. Get that quick carb, that quick energy release because it's going to help you. It's going to make you feel better. But we're looking at women who didn't have to change their or didn't change their diet, weren't really changing anything about what they were doing day to day. We were just following and tracking them. And that was saying that, no, they're actually burning more fat right now. So if you're burning more fat in a phase and you've been told for a very long time to go and grab the quick carbs, eat the apple, and right before your menses, you're craving chocolate and things like that. And so you're following the cravings, but are you actually following the biology and the physiology? And that's where was really determined to change our strategies in women's health to follow the phase. And so after this pilot study, just again, following women around for about 12 weeks. So that's 3 different cycles, which is really great, really good information. Each cycle is different for every woman. So getting more information and observational impact, it was absolutely necessary. But we want to take this into a different direction. So we have studies right now that are active in PCOS. So that's going to be a little bit more hormonally dynamic. There is a lot of insulin resistance that is associated with PCOS. Not everybody, but a decent amount has insulin resistance associated with that. And everything that is hormonally influenced is metabolically influenced. So we really have to take those partners into consideration. We also have a study. We have really great names for studies. So Captivate study is our perimenopause study. So this is specifically looking at the perimenopause range. And I know this is going to blow people away too, but there is no defined range on perimenopause. You don't know when you're starting it, right? And so ideally, we're trying to see if we can ameliorate some of those symptoms like hot flashes, decreased, so atrophy, decreased muscle, sluggishness, cognitive function, all of these things that, women are beginning to go through in the perimenopause transition. And how can we really push the barrier on that, push perimenopause away for a little bit longer, at least ameliorate the symptoms with this precision nutrition strategy. We're looking into postpartum depression, specifically, another hormonally dynamic ailment for women specifically. How can we utilize different nutrition strategies to ameliorate some of these symptoms? You go into pregnancy, you have all of these hormones that are building up, you give birth to the baby, and now the hormones are gone. And your body has to recoup, figure out how to get back to normalcy, how to get back to cyclical normalcy. And there's a lot of energy requirements in terms of that. So what's the metabolic changes in that? So a lot of these precision nutrition strategies that we're using are obviously very low carb, but it's looking at adequate protein intake as well, because that is absolutely necessary. You have two essential macronutrients, fat and protein. So you have to eat those bad boys. If you don't, you're going to see some things start to fall apart. And a lot of times we are hyper focusing on just getting that quick carb energy and not the longevity of or sustainable nutrition strategies for women. So too long didn't read. The She Is Laboratory has lots to do. We have a lot on our to-do list. We're very excited about it.
That's so amazing. And it makes me incredibly excited. I actually started making notes here on the side of questions I have for you, but I quickly want to go to Karen's comment because I think it's so important. So Karen is saying, so interesting. Just thinking about the level of detail around these things that are covered in the school curriculums and the incredible potential to educate young women and men about so much more than a cycle. And I think that is so important because we are not taught these things in school or anywhere really.
No, absolutely not. And if you think I think that I was in 5th grade when we had the "you might start your period soon" talk. And they separated men and women, had conversations with boys about what they were going through, conversations with girls about what they were going through, and they're okay, go ahead and keep your sanitary wipes and your tampons in your locker. You can come talk to the teacher about what's going on, and you can go and change everything that you need. But what we didn't talk about was, okay, what about right before your period where you feel like crud? Is there something that we can eat prior to you taking a test? Or let's say that you're grumpy and you're there with a whole bunch of newly introduced hormonally charged kids. How do we effectively feed them so that their metabolism is working appropriately with their endocrine system and vice versa? So all of those things are in line. And then the cognitive thought process that you want to use and hyper focus and optimize on in school is also working at its best. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're missing. So Karen, you're absolutely right. It would be really great to get a lot more information surrounding this, just for cohesively everybody to be as optimal as they can be in school.
Exactly. And I want to comment on something that you mentioned. It's around the cravings you experienced during your luteal phase, right? Because, if I say I grew up, and when I grew up, I sometimes feel I'm still a child, so I'm still growing up. But I'm not talking, let's say, late teenage years, early university, kind of you become more aware about your body and you start more talking about these things with your girlfriends and so on. But it was very kind of standard and almost like it's kind of not accepted. It's almost like that's the way it is. When you hit PMS, right? That is what you do. You go for the chocolates, you go for the sweets, you go for the junk food, because that is kind of what you have to eat during that time in order to feel better. And even now, if you look at like memes and jokes around PMS, it's mostly revolves around like that joke around I need my ice cream, or I need my this, or I need my that, But my question is, how does those type of foods impact our cycles? And I'm assuming probably making your PMS symptoms even worse compared to like a healthier ketogenic low carb whole food diet.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think we have been we have been taught a lot of these things, and they get built into our system as this is what is. That's a great part about science, right? We can keep unearthing these questions. I mean, scientists they have job security because we'll be able to debunk quite a few things throughout the next few years. But yeah, so let's take luteal phase. We're seeing, and I know that there are other research groups out there that have their own say so on what's happening during the women's cycle, but I'm going to speak specifically for me. And I will say that our lab was one of the very first, if not the first, somebody might publish before us, but the first to literally watch the cycle as hyper focused as we did, and not just the hormones, but the metabolic changes as well. And we are seeing that there is a increase in the caloric need during the luteal phase and a decrease in the amount of carbs burned at that time. So we're going to take an extreme real quick, and then we'll go back to lay cycles specifically. But PMDD, premenstrual dimorphic disorder, it is where you have the luteal phase, and it is just awful. You are exhausted. You're incredibly grumpy. There can be depression. There can be anxiety, hyper manic anxiety and depression during this phase. Incredible cramps and what have you. And a lot of the suggestions, even though we don't really have recommendations for it now because PMDD is just now becoming a hot topic. We don't really have recommendations, but they're like, okay, well, go ahead and make sure that you're eating enough carbs throughout the day. Nobody is focusing on fats and or proteins. And so when you have something that we are seeing in a regular cycle is very heavy fat metabolism based, and we are throwing every carb at the kitchen sink at it, you're going to see that if your body doesn't want that, that's insulin resistance in general. If your body doesn't want it and you keep feeding it glucose, it's not going to function better, right? So if you are more of a fat burner, your pancreas is probably not as active as if you were a hyper-focused carb burner at this moment. But we're seeing in the luteal phase, we are fat or heavier on the fat breakdown side. We are increasing our energy needs. So if we are to give carbs essentially in that moment in time, but we're already predispositioned to be burning more fat, we're not necessarily helping our body. We're in fact throwing it off. There is some metabolic flexibility capabilities where somebody can be good at burning both. But if the general consensus is that we are increasing our need for fat, we should probably give our body fat. Seeing as it's an essential macronutrient anyways, I don't see the problem with it. But again, if you are, okay, I'm going through the luteal phase right now. I haven't eaten anything all day because I've been cramping. And the first thing that I'm going to do is eat chocolate. I can tell you multiple reasons, and everybody anecdotally can say why that's not a good idea. Your stomach's going to be upset. You probably won't get the sugar rush that you think you're going to get. And then your body's still going to feel crampy, bloaty, not great. If we are a little bit more strategic about that, let's say that we're going to, I really want chocolate right now, but I'm going to utilize some avocado mousse, and you can make some great chocolate avocado mousse. And then in the luteal phase, since we're kind of holding on to some water retention too, I'm going to water follows solute. So I'm going to add a little bit of salt into my chocolate mousse. And now we're moving through the process more appropriately. Our body already wants the fat. We're giving it the fat. We do get our little pseudo sweet tooth because we've added some kind of chocolate mousse to it, but it's based in heavy fat. With avocado, you can do heavy cream too. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can substitute for this current, you're going to need chocolate as soon as you're in the luteal phase, that won't metabolically destroy us.
Yeah, and just to touch on that whole idea that we have to eat a certain way, or around the luteal phase. I mean, I've seen some, like, you can buy like a menstrual kit, like a first menstrual kit. I've seen it online. Like, let's say you're expecting your daughter or someone to start their menses, you can buy this kit, and then in this kit comes sanitary towels, tampons, menstrual cups, what have you, like all of these goodies kind of to get them going and to make the whole process a bit easier. But usually those kits also involve chocolates, like carbs, sweets, all of those things. This is
Sodas.
how it's
Yeah.
it's kind of like now you're introduced to it and this is how it goes. Every month, this is what you need, and it's just, it's terrible because that's kind of what are we teaching young women about
Right.
like what they should put into their bodies.
I keep thinking of, I don't know if you call it a meme or a video, but there's one where the husband knows the wife is about to start the period, and it sounds like I don't know, some kind of military X, Y, and Z, and he like runs through the house and he has tampons and he has chocolate. He opens the door and he throws it and he closes
Yes,
the door.
I've seen it.
Although it's hilarious, although it's very funny. I mean, how many times do these young women or young girls go in and say that I know that I have to be grumpy before my period, like, or expect that, and when you project that on yourself anyways, and you're like, I know I'm going to be grumpy and I'm going to need chocolate, and you speak life into that, right? That's now what you're becoming. You're now instilling that habit as an action. And that's so difficult. If we could say, no, it's okay. It's yes, we're going to start our period. We're going to be a little bit more tired, but now we know why we're tired, because we want to burn more fat, but we keep giving ourselves carbs. Maybe if we can transition that, and that would be really incredible to see some dietary recommendations for young girls, prepubescent young girls, so they can get in their head prior to starting what would be the most advantageous and efficacious in terms of nutrition strategies.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. Like, I'm now just but I mean, it probably won't be that funny if you take that same video and like, I'm now thinking in South Africa, we've got something called biltong or droewors, like it's like beef jerky and like dried sausages. When you come, you've got to try it.
I will.
I'll direct you to the best spots. But now I'm thinking like if you have something similar and, now you're throwing like a piece of meat, at the women, like it will probably not have the same effect. And it's so true, obviously I feel very cautious in saying this, but it also comes down to if you set that expectation, you're going to feel a certain way. There may or may not, but I'm just saying there might be some aspect of like a placebo effect to it as well, or like a projection of like an expectation. I'm going to feel a certain way. I'm going to have certain cravings because that is what's been taught to me. And I think it's important that we start changing the narrative around it. And it's very interesting to know that during that time, your body actually prefers to burn more fat than glucose. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
My next question that I wanted to ask to you was, you spoke about perimenopause, menopause, and can you just briefly explain kind of what happens in a woman's body when that kind of starts? And what is the difference between perimenopause and menopause? And she spoke a bit about like there's no set time, there's no clear timeline. Spoke about people who might have thought they were in menopause already, but then they changed their diet and their period came back. Chat us through that.
Yeah. So I want to start first with a disclaimer that that our reproductive health status, our reproductive age, has significantly decreased in history. So we were able to have, and I'm going to use having babies as our reproductive cycle timeline. We were able to have children earlier on, and that range starts to get shorter and shorter and shorter. Now I think geriatric pregnancy here in the States is at 35. My mom had me at 38. So now it's high geriatric pregnancy is higher risk, but I don't feel like I was a very high risk pregnancy. My mom might have said otherwise, but depending on my teenage years, she could have told you otherwise. But so this cycle or this range starts to decrease. In terms of perimenopause is the transition from I have a cycle every 28, and we're going to use 28 because again, ranges for everybody. Not everybody is identical. 28 to 32 days. I have cycles at least once every month. That's our general consensus for a reproductive aged woman. So you have the cycle every single month. Just keeps going. It just keeps going. And all of a sudden your cycles change from every month to every 5 weeks. And then sometimes you skip one, and then you have another cycle 2 months later. That transition, and you're still having cycles, they just happen to be a little bit more intermittent. It's kind of the same situation, or not situation, it's the same cycle pattern as those who have reproductive concerns or are hormonally dynamic, like PCOS. So basically, the cycle goes from being normal, cyclical every month, to not. And once you get into that transition, it's not that you cannot reproduce and you cannot have a child. It's not that you are way too old for it. It's just that it's slowing down. And women specifically, our bodies are cyclical. So once we get into that transition where we stop following this normal cycle, everything else starts to slow down. You'll see that there's a increase in brain fog, cognitive decline. Women who are going through this perimenopause transition feel very tired. It's not to say nobody else in any transition feels tired or doesn't feel tired. Like we just talked about the luteal phase. But just if we were talking in a general consensus here, start to feel more tired. It's harder to lose weight. It's harder to hold muscle, and it's not that you have gained 70 pounds, but you are starting to hold on to the 5 that you were able to lose every summer. And so this transition is difficult because it's different for everybody. And so one of the biggest factors is the metabolic influence that has to do with this. So once our body starts to say, okay, we probably don't need to go through the cycle anymore, our brain and all of the other things that can control metabolism is basically like, okay, well, if I don't have to continue rip the lining out of the uterus and then fuel this hormone and this hormone and this, what am I doing now? And if we are hyper focusing, or I guess intaking glucose or carbohydrates at an excess, and your brain's already slowing down saying, okay, I didn't need to do the same processes that I did before, what's to say that it's not going to do the same thing for pancreas secretion of insulin? So now we have all of this glucose, and we have now slowed down on our normal cyclical changes. Everything else is kind of a pleiotropic effect, right? It starts to slow down as well. And so in the perimenopause transition range that we're seeing, we see a lot of weight gain. We see a lot of cognitive decline. But we also see that there is a lot of wine that is being drank. There is a lot of carbs and bread and things like that, and a lot of insulin resistance. And so the best component of nutritional strategy for women in perimenopause is really working on increasing insulin sensitivity, which everybody on the line knows that this is decreasing our carbs, increasing our fat, and making sure that we keep at least moderate level of protein. But speaking of protein, we do see that muscle, I don't want to say decay, but atrophy. We start to lose muscle, can't hold on to it, can't bounce back as quickly as we did, 2 to 3 years ago. But one of the issues is because we are decreasing our intake of protein. So we're hyper focusing or hyper ingesting carbohydrates and not focusing on our fats, not focusing on our proteins. And so our body, which is already starting to get out of whack, is now even more out of whack. And then for menopause is actually just a singular day. Menopause is the first day of your very last period ever, which makes it very hard to determine what day of menopause is, because I was just talking to you about that study where women thought they had already passed and didn't have their cycle anymore, but really they were just in secondary amenorrhea. And so post-menopause is any other day after that very last day of your last cycle ever. And in menopause, the same thing. Our body is like, okay, well, we're not cyclically doing the shedding of the lining and X, Y, and Z. So we're well-oiled machines until we're not. So it really doesn't know what to do. So we see a cognitive decline, dementia, things like that in women, even at an earlier onset than men, and even sometimes at an earlier rate. And if we were to look at nutritional strategies that helped optimize cognition. I don't know what that would be, or help optimize insulin sensitivity. I think that would be incredibly applicable. I think that we should also consider resistance training for women 2 to 3 times a week. Just for muscle building. We know that ketogenic diets are protein sparing. So it's not like you're going to work out and then break your muscle down if you're on a low carbohydrate diet. All of these interventions have been with us since the ancient of times, right? It's not a ketogenic diet, ketogenic interventions are not new. It's just how we need to optimize how we're using them, and specifically in women.
It's so interesting, and thank you for differentiating between perimenopause and menopause, because I don't always think the general public out there knows the difference. I remember when I was a little bit younger and I had like aunts and other family members, they would say, I'm going through menopause, or I'm in my menopause. And you now clearly explained menopause is actually the last day of your last period, and that's it, right?
Exactly.
And then perimenopause is often what is being referred to as I'm in my menopause,
Correct.
That is the perimenopausal period where you're having these symptoms of transitioning. So thank you so much for clarifying that. And I've got 2 questions, because it's so interesting. You've mentioned, and maybe I can ask them. I'll ask both of them. So you've mentioned this, the reproductive cycle and lifetime, right? So you've mentioned that it has shifted. And I think what is common nowadays, what I've seen on like mommy groups and things on Facebook, is that girls start their menses as soon as 8 years old. So my question is, why do you think that is? And when you start your menses at a younger age, does that mean you will also go into or potentially start perimenopause at a younger age? That is kind of, so that's my 2 questions into one for you.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I can only speak hypothetically because there needs to be so much more research done on this. For the girls that are starting menses at an early age, I think unfortunately it is a product of environment. I think our food is throwing us off. I think a lot of the produced food, the manufactured food. Obviously, if we wanted to stick with whole foods, nutrient dense, those kind of things, I think a lot of things would be ameliorated and changed if we just stuck to the basics. However, we don't. I think that there is a lot of preservatives and additional flavorings and sugars and things like that we really don't have a good grip on what they do. I specifically for some of the new, like, I'm trying to not name drop brands, but some of the new desserts and what have you that, like, yeah, they do taste incredible, but they almost would taste what I would think a drug would be in my system, right? Where you're like, okay, I need to get more and I have to have it. You shouldn't really, especially since we are able to survive fasted for a bit, you shouldn't have to basically scratch your arm when you're not eating the food. And some of these pastries turn out that way. And so I unfortunately think it has a lot to do with our produce food that we're seeing this hormonally dynamic switch in earlier onset of menses. And do I think that they'll hit perimenopause early? If they don't hit perimenopause early, I think they'll have some issues in terms of reproductive dynamic changes like PCOS. We're going to see a lot more PCOS in the world, a lot more diagnoses of PCOS due to what we're seeing in our food and our ingredients, unfortunately. And I mean, I think perimenopause and early perimenopause may be a thing, but I also think menopause itself will happen earlier. A lot of the cognitive decline will happen earlier. You'll see way bigger increases in type 2 diabetes and all of the other caveats to that, cardiovascular disease, renal failure, chronic kidney disease. They all seem to be very metabolically influenced. And if we start really screwing up the metabolism early, you're going to see some later effects that aren't necessarily so great. I mean, we're seeing type 2 diabetes in way more pediatric patients than we ever need to see. Like it's incredibly unfortunate. And I think a lot of it has to do with what's available. I mean, some of the juices, man, I have to go through each label before I give them to my son, because my son already runs at the speed of light and doesn't stop until he finally gets knocked out. But some of the juices that you'll see the amount of sugar. I was like, the amount of calories of sugar in this juice are almost more than the calories this child needs to survive in a day. It's insane, and it's pure sugar. And you can just see the change in attitude when you give kids some of these things. And again, if it's changing attitude, it's changing behavior, it's definitely changing the metabolism. That's 1,000% where we need to start. We need to get the crap off of the shelves and go back to the basics.
Exactly. And it's actually incredibly sad if you think about it. I mean, the food that you're kind of describing is like, it's making food stuff, food products. I don't even know if you can call it food. It's making it so hyper palatable that it becomes addictive. Exactly like you say, it becomes like a drug, because none of those, you don't get those things in nature. It's not food combinations that you would find somewhere in nature and go like, oh my word, I can't stop eating. I can't help myself. You don't get that. And I think, unfortunately, so much marketing goes into marketing these types of foods to kids. I mean, just as an example, my 6-year-old, a while ago, we were walking in a shop. We usually order like stuff online, and it just reminded me again why we went to the shops, and she got so excited when she saw the cereal boxes. So we never buy cereal. It's not, I even tell them that's not food. It's not breakfast. I'm like, that's terrible for your body. Right. And she just, like, her eyes almost popped out of her head, because like, look at all these beautiful pictures and these characters and like these toys inside the boxes and stuff. And I mean, as a parent, it's incredibly difficult standing there and your child, especially if you don't know, you don't have this knowledge, because on the box it says it's high in vitamin X, Y, and Z, and it's got A, B, and C, and all of these wonderful things. Like, they're trying to sell you why.
Whole grains.
Yes, why this is now something you need to feed your child. And then obviously standing there as a parent, and now you've got your child freaking out. I want that one. I want that one. It's kind of like, okay, well, it can't be that bad, right? Because look, it's got all these wonderful nutrients that my kid needs. So companies are blatantly marketing to children. And also, like, kind of, there's a lack of nutrition. There's a lack of nutrition information out there. People don't always understand. I always joke, not joke, I mean, who knows, maybe it's true, but with our Eat Better South Africa programs, what we do is we focus a lot on learning how to read food labels, like the ingredients list, understanding what's in there, what does everything mean, and nutritional information on the packaging of food, right? And I always joke and I say, you know what? It's so small. I've got perfect eyesight, but I have to squint sometimes to see. And then I say, well, maybe it's just they do it on purpose so you can't read what's in there.
Yes.
It's
you have to take a monocle into the grocery store.
Yeah, or you maybe have to try and Google the product. Maybe you find the nutritional information online. But I mean, that's why we anyway just say, like, eat whole foods. If it comes out of a packet, it's probably not meant to go into your body. But it's parents not knowing these things. They think they are doing the best for their children, not knowing that they're actually indirectly poisoning the kids in the long run by giving them these food.
Yeah, no, it's actually, I don't even know if my husband will remember this story, but we were, our oldest son, it was back when he loved cereal. He was a huge fan of cereal. And I'm reading these ingredients and I'm like going through them out loud, because I had just started probably middle grad school at this time. And I'm reading these ingredients and my husband looks at me, he goes, "Bless you." He thought I had sneezed because of what I was trying to read. And so it made me think of that, because if it sounds like a different whatever you probably should put that bad boy down.
Yeah. Yeah. I say, like, if you can't pronounce it and you don't know what it is, then maybe it's a no.
Yeah,
Gosh. Oh.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
coming back to menopause and perimenopause, I've heard a lot of theories around why women go through this. And I'd love to hear your take on it. Why do you think women cycles change? And is there, like, before I tell you some of the theories I've heard, I'd love to hear what you say about it. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think that happens? Because it's not the same for men, right? They don't go, well, not as predominant. I know there's some people say there's like male menopause, but they don't go through the exact same thing as us. And why do you think us as women have that and they don't?
Yeah. I do think we were designed to in our later life have a breather from having kids. I think this sounds barbaric. Please understand, everybody on the line, that I am not a your only job here is to have babies. I'm clearly not that. I run a lab. But I think that as we get to the end of our life cycle, we are not meant to have babies at that point. So I think that the cyclical pattern happens until we get to enjoy looking at our babies and grandbabies and what have you. And I think the transition specifically, I don't believe that it was ever as long as it is now. I think that it was very probably had like a couple months of really off periods before you were just done with your period. And we could go back to the anecdotal historical evidence like I've found on that, but it's very minimal because, again, up until now, nobody really was able to speak on that stuff. It wasn't allowed. We kept periods and menses and what have you in the dark because no one must know that we bleed. It's just very silly. But I think I think that this perimenopause range just started to get more pronounced and more elongated as our food choices started to go down. But probably back when we used to tell people that smoking cigarettes was a great idea and healthy for you. I think that the medical backgrounds on that kind of changed things. So once you start to add in these different carcinogens, and that includes some of the foods that we have nowadays too, and different products that really put a juxtaposition on our metabolic status and even our reproductive status, that you will see reproductive status start to change. So I think perimenopause, and as big of a deal as it is now, is only because of how our bodies work now, what food is available to us, the environment. I mean, anything that you put the air fresheners in your room that smells so lovely, that also has chemicals that you're not supposed to be smelling every day, 24 hours a day. So I think it has a lot to do with that. But I do think that perimenopause probably used to be at the most a year before it was over. Now I think it's just a little bit elongated. I do think a little bit can be us actually hyper focusing on the changes of our cycle finally. But unfortunately, it hasn't been in the best way. We're hyper focusing on the changes of our cycle because they have now added complexity to our health diagnoses and things like that. But I don't think it used to be as aggressive or looming as it is now. I want to hear these transition theories, though.
Yeah. So, well, just one of the more, like, say, interesting. It's just, I sometimes like to think about things in a different way. And one of it is, they say if you look across the animal kingdom, there's also not a lot of like animals that goes through this. I think elephants and orcas and some whales also go through like what could be described as like perimenopause and menopause.
Mhm.
And then some people say as well, it's to preserve the matriarchal wisdom and knowledge and to allow us as women to live longer so we can, so we can kind of share our wisdom and knowledge with the next generation. And I like that theory.
I was like,
It's
that was
interesting.
good. I
Yeah.
like that one. That would be really good.
Yeah, because I think, and I'm speaking under correction, so I might be wrong. Don't come at me, but go read up on it. But I think it's also about like orcas, the female orcas, and I think specifically the elephants. The females also, I mean, they are the matriarchs of the pod, or the troop they are in,
Yeah.
and they also tend to live longer, and they often kick out the males out of the troop of elephants, as an example. So they say they think it's to allow the females to live longer,
Mhm.
and to hold that role within the community, like the community and what they live in. And there's some people that say, well, maybe it's something similar for us as women within our society setup, to keep our wisdom, within our
Yeah.
communities. I
Well, I
think
mean,
that's
sometimes I look at my son put his like foot in his mouth literally or something, and I'm like, yeah, I can't go anywhere anytime soon because I have a lot to teach you still. And any parents on the line are going to be like, yeah, I can think of my adult children and think the same thing.
exactly, exactly. Wow. So it seems we've actually, I mean, we still got time, and I see Libby saying, sorry, I missed it. Well, Libby, there's still some time. So if you've got any questions, anyone else on the live feed watching, if you've got any questions, you're welcome to pop them in the feed. If you've missed it and you are watching the replay, please, you are still more than welcome to pop us your questions. I'm sure we're going to have Madison back on our live stream. We're going to have her at the World Nutrition Summit, where you can also come, mingle, network with her, and ask your questions. But there's questions that I've got here that I actually think rolled over from last time that we had you on a live. So I quickly want to go over there. And I think we have touched on some of them, but I'm going to ask them anyway. So the first one here is, what single thing do you suggest a young woman start doing right now to improve their health, for longevity and for hormone health in the long run?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have one thing. It's very hard to do one thing, but okay.
We can make it three. Will that help?
Well, two, just two,
Two.
two
Okay,
things
your
I have.
top
Okay. The first one, resistance training. Absolutely increase your resistance training. Start now. Because even if you start resistance training in perimenopause or postmenopause, you still see dynamic results. I'm sorry, Yanni, you were going to say something.
I want to ask, maybe just clarify for us and for those that's watching, what is resistance training? How does that differ from, let's say, cardio or weight training? What's the difference? What is
Sure.
resistance?
Sure. Resistance training is going to be anytime that there is resistance on the body and you are utilizing your muscles to push against that resistance. There are people on the line that will probably talk about eccentric or concentric exercise. We'll get into those here in a second, but it is essentially, you want to utilize the weight training. So we want resistance exercise. It doesn't have to be with a specific weight. It can be body weight. It can be cables, anything that requires you to activate a muscle against some type of resistance, whether it be gravity or the weight itself. Because when you do that, when you are basically, how you build muscle is to rip the muscle spindles apart and put them back together. That sounds very aggressive, but that is a very lay way to say that. So we want the muscle fibers to actually rip apart, because when they build back together, they're even stronger, they're even bigger, and we are increasing in muscle size, hypertrophy, weightlifting capacity. And the reason I say that is because when you have more muscle, you're more metabolically active. So not only do you have more muscle to lift things and throw things and feel great about yourself, but you're also burning more calories at rest. And at rest, because we're not eating carbs, when we're at rest, what do you think we're eating? Well, what do you think we're burning? We're burning some fat, right? So we become more metabolically active, more fat adapted, and especially utilizing the resistance training as a strategy to combat some of the other things that you could see throughout the life cycle. And I know we're specifically speaking to women, but men, you can take the other side of this too. But in women, if we're looking at cramps, if we're looking at fatigue, if we're looking at metabolic or hormonal anomalies, a lot of those can be mediated or at least ameliorated and break some of these symptoms off just by exercising. So you feel crampy. It's not the first thing for us to say, oh, I feel like crap, I should probably move around, but you absolutely should. If you feel crampy, if you feel bloated, you should go work out. You should go live, and specifically at the very least, resistance train. It helps increase your bone density. Obviously, we're increasing muscle. It helps with cognitive function. So that is my first one, resistance training. So that is you want a resisted weight against your muscle. You want to be able to flex that bad boy and build muscle capacity for multiple reasons than just getting swole. And then the second one is watch your carbs. For some people are more metabolically flexible than others, and they can burn carbs no problem. They can utilize carbs more no problem. But if you are noticing that the carbs are not doing you justice, like you are eating the carbs and you're expecting that quick energy and it's not really giving it to you, maybe hyper focusing on carbs isn't good for you, or isn't for you specifically. Maybe we should look at the only essential macronutrients, protein and fat. Maybe the non-essential macronutrient is not essential to us. And those are like, oh no, I really, gluconeogenesis, you have to have glucose, blood sugar, X, Y, and Z. Yes, gluconeogenesis can happen if you are fat adapted, and it absolutely does. Look at any of the low fat literature. You will never see anybody have a blood glucose of 0. Nowhere and anywhere ever on any ketogenic low carbohydrate research will you find somebody that has a blood sugar level of 0. That's because our body can create glucose that it needs, which is why it is a non-essential macronutrient. So those two, resistance training and decrease carbs. Because when you decrease carbs, you only have 2 other essential macronutrients that you can go to, and both of those are really, really great for you.
Well, you are literally leading into my next question. So firstly, thank you for that. And then the next question, since you spoke about the 2 essential nutrients, fat and protein, my question is, what's your opinion on something like the carnivore diet for women versus something like a ketogenic diet?
Yeah, I think it's I've done both, and I've done both for a decent period of time, both at different life stages, and I think that's what it is. I think it's going to be dependent on what you are trying to focus on. So let's say that, or not even trying to focus on what you're going through. Let's say that the ketogenic diet specifically has worked for you, but you want to try carnivore. You're noticing that getting all of that protein isn't easy for you. Well, great. You can still get a lot of the same benefits on a ketogenic diet, and vice versa. Let's say that you are a meat eater, and if your body is metabolically adapted enough to be able to eat all that meat and stay with levels of, I would say the goal would be to increase levels of ketones to at least 0.5 millimole per liter, just because your body is now fat adapted and you're getting all of the great effects of being chronically keto adapted. If you can keep if you are trying to figure out how to be carnivore, but also keep your ketones up, you can add oils and fats to your meat as well, and still stay technically carnivore, but get the other nutrients that you would need from the oils and the saturated fat and all of the great fats and useful nutrients for you. If somebody tells me that on a carnivore diet, I'm not ever scared about it. It wouldn't be something I deter them from, but that's the point of precision nutrition, right? It's individualized. It's very for you. And that's really what nutrition should be. There shouldn't be a one diet fits all. Even the ketogenic diet, it's not a one diet fits all. We give you the guidelines of a well-formulated ketogenic diet, but we know some people are going to be able to stay in ketosis and have higher carbs, slightly higher carbs. Some people are going to be able to increase their proteins a little bit more. And some people really need to stick to just fats and have no problem eating a stick of butter. I am not that human. So I like that my metabolic flexibility requires lots of different sustenance. But I do enjoy that it requires bacon. I'll give props out to that. So I think it is really up to you. If you have found that the carnivore diet makes you feel better, and you're not seeing you don't have any kidney concerns, kidney disorders, reproductive health concerns after starting this diet for a long period or for a chronic period of time, then you should be set. You know your body better than anybody else. But if you're trying one of these diets, and I'll say too that it does take time to adapt to these diets. So if you're trying one of these diets and you go to switch to a ketogenic diet for the first time after eating, the world's largest Starbucks in, venti this, McDonald's this, X, Y, and Z, you're probably going to not feel so great for the first day. That's just your body trying to change. It will happen with every single diet. And I mean, not feel great, meaning that your body will probably process it very weird and you need to stick to the bathroom for a hot second. But again, you would do that going from a ketogenic diet to the McDonald's diet in a single day as well. So that's not to demonize any type of dietary intervention strategy. Just keep that in mind if you are deciding to switch to a different diet.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I mean, I've many times throughout the years, I've had people specifically like closer friends and family, so they're gonna try like low carb, keto, lifestyle, even carnivore for that matter, and then like day 1 or 2, they're like, oh no, I don't feel that well, so clearly it's not for me, and it's that thing, trying just to understand that whether you went onto any diet, it's going to take some time to adapt. It's not to say that it's the diet that's not working. You have to give it a little bit more time just to see what it does. And I love how you say, like also trust your body and see how you feel, but keeping in mind, just give it a few more days before you make the call whether it's working or not.
Right.
But yeah, with Madison, oh, thank you so much. I always feel so inspired and excited and hopeful after I've spoken to you. There's so much research that still needs to be done, but it's so good to know there's people out there like you and your team at your lab that's doing it. So thank you so, so much for that. Before we end off, I would love for you just to maybe to share with the audience where they can find you, or if they want to connect with you, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find our website. We're actually on Facebook and Instagram and our website in general. But for Instagram, I think it's sheis.lab.osu. You'll notice us. We have the almost Superman symbol, but it's not quite there for the logo. It's very pronounced. You can't miss it. We're on Facebook as well. And then osu.edu/sheis laboratories. You'll be able to find us there.
All right. Thank you so, so much again. Thank you for our wonderful audience. I see a comment from Alison. Yay, let women rule the world. Yes, let's do that. And Kieran is saying, looking forward to listen back. Sorry to be late. Thanks, folks. So yeah, thank you to everyone who joined us today. Again, thank you to Dr. Madison Kackley. It's been lovely. I've learned a lot. I'm sure all of you learned a lot. And yeah, soon I'll be seeing you here in Cape Town.
Yeah. Everybody who's online, do not forget to buy your tickets. Come see us, come meet with us, even if it has to be virtual. This is an incredible summit. So much information, great heavy hitters in the science realm. You want facts, you want evidence, you want a little bit of bias. Here I am. No, we've got you. So please go and get your tickets. We are coming up on the month. We have October, right? Oh my gosh. Is it August? It's the end of August already, guys.
Oh, let's not get into that. I'm like, where's the year gone? Like just the other day, my daughter was like first day in big school, and now it's like almost over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where's the time going? It's insane.
It's gone. But thank you again so much for having me. I appreciate you. It's always so lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.